I'm Kelsey King, and I serve as the admissions coordinator for Eastern Iowa Community Colleges.
And I'm Carrie Hansen, and I serve as the admissions coordinator for Muscatine Community College. So thank you, students, for being here. We just want to remind students to mute yourself so we don't get any feedback while our speakers are speaking. Awesome. Thank you.
So this is the Eastern Iowa Community College's virtual career fair. This session is for fire, police, and EMT. And we have some great speakers joining us today. We have Zach Soliz, who's a Lieutenant Fire Marshal and as Public Education Officer. Zach just celebrated his 17th year as a firefighter, so congratulations, Zach. He does community outreach, which includes career talks, smoke alarm installs, business inspections, and juvenile fire setter talks. He recently became duly sworn as a police officer after attending a 16-week academy, and this responsibility is used during fire investigations, which are criminal in nature. Also joining us is Andrew Harris, who's a sergeant with the City of Davenport Police Department and does community impact and team supervisor. Also joining us is Jame Temple, who is with Eastern Iowa Community Colleges, our emergency medical technician instructor for continuing education, and that program is at the urban campus in Davenport. So thank you all so much for being here and joining us today. To start things off, Zach, we'll start with you. If you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself and your career area and being a firefighter, please.
Okay, I'll just jump right in with post high school. Didn't know what I was initially going to do. Went to our community college in Illinois, which was Blackhawk Community College. I got my associates, and then I went to Illinois State. I thought I wanted to be a teacher. While I was doing some of those classes, then it got expensive, living off campus, that whole type of thing. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make a couple dollars somewhere. So I did an apprenticeship. An apprenticeship is something where you learn a trade, typically in construction. And I became an electrician. So it was a 5-year apprenticeship. Each year I got paid more, worked on a job site, had a contractor that would employ me and send me to these job sites. And in the evenings, almost like night school, I would end up having classes, and you just keep advancing throughout the process. It was towards the middle of my apprenticeship when 9/11 happened, and it really changed my focus on what I wanted to do. I told my wife I wanted to test to be a firefighter. She said no. I started testing. And then as I graduated from my apprenticeship, I also at that same time got hired on at Davenport Fiire, and I've been a firefighter ever since. So now I, like the bio kind of said, 17 years on here, recently got duly sworn. I do fire investigations. Every fire we have in Davenport, we have to investigate, do a cause and origin. And now if anything is criminal in nature and arson, I can assist with the training and supervision of Davenport Police Department to investigate those fires. So it's a very unique career. It's a very rewarding career. The 3 paths I took were kind of very different in nature. Didn't have to go specifically to college for all of that stuff. But I've benefited from it, and I really enjoy what I do. I didn't do the military thing. I thought about it back in high school, but I think this is another example of like kind of giving back to the community and being involved that way. So that's how it got to me to where I am. And it's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Great, thanks, Zach. Sergeant Harris, we'll go over to you next. You want to tell us a little bit more about your background and being a police officer with Davenport, please?
Hey, Kelsey, good to see you. My name's Andrew Harris. I'm a Davenport police officer. I'm a proud Davenport Central Blue Devil graduate. After graduating Davenport Central, I enlisted in the Marine Corps Reserves. This was great for me because it was the best of both worlds, because I was able to just be active duty for about 6 months while I got my training. And then once I was done with my training, it was January. So I actually enrolled into Scott Community College and took some classes there. And I didn't really, initially I wanted to be a teacher, but I had to take a social science general ed class, and I had a choice between psychology, sociology, or intro to criminal justice. And I took intro to criminal justice with a professor named Dr. Tom McInich. I don't know if he's still there or not, but it was the best class I've ever had in my education up to that point, where I found myself actually wanting to study and learning. I did all right in the class. I think I just got a B- or so, but I kind of lit the fire to the direction I wanted to go. So I finished up the semester there at Scott Community College, and then I transferred to Northern Iowa and I majored in criminology. And after I graduated from UNI, I was hired in a small town, Denison, Iowa, which is in Western Iowa, about 13 police officers. And I served there for 6 years. And then I was lucky enough to get hired with Davenport Police. And I've been with Davenport Police Department for 17 years. For the Davenport Police Department, with the education requirements, it doesn't matter what type of degree you have. We want people with a lot of different backgrounds. And so that's pretty cool for students like yourself to figure out what you want to do. We have several police officers who have education degrees, science degrees, communication, psychology, and obviously criminal justice. But we're right now, our requirements, and it has been for several years, is to have at least 2 years of college. Once again, it doesn't matter what major you are, or 1 year of active duty military. So you can go either routes, but those are some of the education requirements.
Great, thank you. Jame, we'll switch over to you next. Oh, you're muted. That's always got to happen at least once during a presentation.
And when you go last, you mute, you don't mute yourself back on. So my background is a little bit different than Zach and Andrew's. I went to college right out of high school. I have a degree in biology. I went to college, took an EMT class in college. I figured it would look good on a medical school application. First year out of college, I narrowly missed getting into medical school, but I had to have something to do, right? I just couldn't wait another year and, twiddle my thumbs. I had to find something to do. So a friend of mine said, hey, why don't you come to paramedic school? I'm like, I don't want, I just got done with 4 years of school. I'd rather not go back to school right away. He said, come on. I'm like, all right, fine. So I went to paramedic school. Honestly, that's how it worked. And I went through paramedic school at Eastern Iowa Community College when we had class back at the old PV High School. I mean, that was back in 1990, you guys. I've been a medic for, this will be 30 years. So relatively a dinosaur in the medic world, right? So got my medic, and they said, look, if you apply here, you do an internship or you do ride time, we'd hire you if you applied here. So I applied to medic, who runs the EMS in the Quad Cities, has the ambulance service, and I have been there ever since. I've been at the college here for 15 years, kind of, running the EMS programs and making sure that the students get what they need. So that's kind of my background. I've worked alongside Zach. I've known Zach for a long time. And again, I will say that everybody on this panel relies on everybody else on this panel. They're separate entities, but they have the same goal. They work in the same situations, and everybody has their own particular niche. But it's a great system. It's a teamwork thing. If you need to be able to work in teams, this is the ultimate team sport. It really, really is.
Great, thanks, Jame. So can each of you talk a little bit more about kind of what a day in the life looks like for you? Jame, do you want to start with that?
Yeah,
one?
I can do that. For us, on the medic side, it really depends where you work. I mean, a lot of departments, such as Zach's, in our area, a lot of them require you to be at least an EMT to sit for the test. Some do not, but most do. Some require you to be a paramedic before you can apply and test for the fire service. If you have an EMT certification or a paramedic certification and you want to go the law enforcement route, it helps you. It looks really, really good on your law enforcement application. So to have that background is really a nice, you can go either way, or you can just stay straight and work medicine the entire time, the entire part of your career. So it depends on where you work. The days are different. The typical day. The typical day is not a typical thing. Honestly, that's part of the draw, right, of the profession. You could go in the next day that you go to work and you could see just a few people, you know, you're not really busy. The next day you could run 10 and see a whole bunch of stuff and wonder how in the world did we do any of that? So it's really hard to predict a typical day, right? I saw a chat question. Where did it go? I just saw it.
Yeah,
I'll try
it
to keep
was, what do you like most about your job?
I think for me, I just talked about it. It's the fact that it's not the same twice. And you get to meet some people that you never would have met. You get to do things and go places and be involved in things that you never ever thought you would be involved in. And honestly, you get to make a difference in people, not just in a situation, but with people. That's the best part. That's the best part of the job and the hardest part of the job at the same time. That's just for me. I'm not sure about the other guys, but that's where it's at for me.
Thanks, Jamie.
So it's a typical day, honestly, again, it depends where you go. Sometimes you're at the station. Sometimes you have a home and a place to be, and you're with the same shift all day and with the same people every third day or every second day, however your shifts work. You get to work as a group. Some days you bounce around and you post or sit in common areas that are, you know, the busiest. So you staff your places where the action's supposed to be. There's a software program that we use here in Davenport, in the Quad Cities, Earlytown, Iowa side, that predicts where the next call should be and where the most likely location they should be. So they move people accordingly to where the need is or going to be, right? So there's a little bit of science behind it as well. You get to do some cool things. You get to do things that, for me, I don't have to ask anybody if we should do that, right? If I'm in a hospital or an office setting, I have to ask somebody, can I do this? Can we do this for the patient? Can I give them this medicine? Can I do this treatment? And I have to get an order for someone to go, yeah, we should. As a pre-hospital provider, both in the fire side and medic side, I don't have to ask anybody. No one's around at 3 a.m. to ask. You just do what you do. And you know the rules, you play within the sidelines, and that's how the job goes. So that's the fun part of the job. That's a big draw for me, because you have to be self-sufficient and rely on people in your group to make it happen. So it's a confidence building job. It's a personal and enriching position, just because you get to meet people in their worst moments sometimes and make a difference in that small piece of time. It's really a cool thing. I'll yield my time to one of the other guys in the group.
Thanks, Jamie.
Yep.
Andrew, we'll turn it over to you if you want to talk about kind of what the day in life is like, and what, to Parker's question, what you enjoy most.
That's a great question, Parker. So at the Davenport Police Department, we have 167 sworn police officers. So there's so many different jobs. I work in community policing units, myself and 2 other police officers. So my job is a little bit different than a patrol officer or a detective or a traffic officer or a computer forensic officer. So I want to talk just more about a patrol officer, because that's where I've spent most of my career, and that's where you would start off as a Davenport police officer. So we have 3 shifts at the Davenport Police Department, morning, afternoon, and night shifts. For the most part, I'd worked afternoon shifts, so my day would start at 2:45. Obviously, you'd want to show up a little bit early. We would have briefing at 2:45. You would find out your assignment. Davenport's made up into 8 different beats or areas, and you would go out there and you would start responding to 911 calls, calls for service like domestics or shoplifters. And if you had the luxury of having some discretion time, you'd be able to do some extra patrols in some hot spots at Davenport, do traffic stops, do pedestrian stops, and just be present in those neighborhoods. Myself as a community policing officer, we spend a lot of time building relationships with our community. And like today, obviously I'm spending some time with you as high school students and young adults. Later on this afternoon, I'm prepping to get ready for a meeting. We're working with the neighborhood, referencing traffic issues. So we're going to get some data together for our meetings to be prepped up with that. And then I'm ending my day at 6 o'clock. We have a big neighborhood meeting over at an organization called the 180. And it's an opportunity for us to bring neighborhoods together, to work together, to make their neighborhoods safe, but also to discover all the good that's going on in their neighborhoods and to celebrate just being in that specific neighborhood. The best thing about my job, I agree with the paramedic right there, is the people. We're in the people business. We don't make anything. We don't sell anything. We serve people. So if you're interested in serving people and making an impact on a person's life, every single day as a police officer, a firefighter, or a paramedic, you have the opportunity to change someone's life. And that's a huge responsibility, but it's also a great opportunity. So that is definitely the best thing, is building those relationships with people. And sometimes it is on their worst day of their life, but they remember you. And if you do it right, they're going to appreciate you, and you can make that lifelong relationship with them and their families.
Thank you. Zach, we'll turn it over to you next.
All right. Got a couple things here. So I like working with this panel. I really do. Like Jame, and I work with Sergeant Harris for a long time now. So for the Davenport Fire Department, we're very unique compared to a typical 9-to-5 job. We work 3 shifts also, but our shifts are 24 hours long for one shift, and then you get 48 hours off. So today is C shift. We go A, B, and C. Today's C shift, we start at 6:45 in the morning. The crews that are working do a rig check first thing in the morning. Then they have like maybe house duties to do. We live at fire stations. There's 7 of them located throughout Davenport that we respond from. So there's not just one station we're at. Although I'm at Central Firehouse, the oldest active firehouse west of the Mississippi, there's still six other fire stations throughout our community that we respond from. From 9 o'clock till, let's say, 4:30, we have different working schedules. Today, there's hearing tests. So we have an audio hearing test done every year. That's taken up a bunch of the morning for a lot of the crews working today. Later this afternoon, they're working on what we call hot drills. We have a house that we're training out of, and we're working on different type of rescue techniques for our own members. So it's a very hands-on educational process. From 4:30 on for the rest of the evening till 6:45, we're in what's called ready time. We're ready to respond to calls. So if it happens at dinner, which typically does, I've had every meal you can think of, warm and cold, seen every movie, out there, and it's been paused numerous times because we go on these calls and stuff like that. But it's part of what we do. We average like 17,000 EMS calls or fire calls, 911 calls a year. So that breaks down to about 45 to 50 calls throughout Davenport on a shift. So the calls happen at all times of the day. There's a spike usually maybe during cooking time for cooking fires, but we respond to car accidents, river rescues, EMS calls, just like Jame was talking about, where if an incident comes in for a medical, the ambulance will go there, and so will the fire department. We have similar skill sets that they have. Our minimum requirement is being an EMT basic. That's what I am. And then we can assist with the medic responding to our calls. They transport, we don't. And because of our location, we get to a lot of calls, maybe sometimes quicker than the medics will. We also assist PD, like Sergeant Harris was talking with patrol. If they have car accidents, if there's some type of situation, they go to an incident and that person needs medical attention, or they need to get inside the house. Oftentimes we don't have keys, but we have a lot of stuff that looks like keys in the forms of axes, axes and sledgehammers. So we can help out with that. And then our minimum requirements to get hired on are being the EMT, living in Davenport, and being 21 years old. So there's a little break in time, typically outside of high school, that you can get some education, look at some career paths, but 21 is our minimum. And anything you can do to kind of come full circle as far as the educational process or testing, it always helps you out. And then for me to go back to the main question of like what I like most is this is very much a team atmosphere. We live with our coworkers. We're at the same firehouses. We have meals with them. It's really a nice team aspect here. And then also for me, I was looking into education, like Sergeant Harris was saying, And right now, being the public education officer, I end up being in a lot of roles that are like a teacher. So it's a lot of like what I was maybe looking at doing with my career before, and then now I'm doing it this way. So it's a great career, very rewarding. Work with a lot of different departments and agencies, and no 2 days are ever the same. No 2 car accidents are ever the same. Medical calls or fires are ever the same. So you have to really think on your feet. If you want to stay a firefighter your entire career and just respond to calls, you can. We're a paramilitary organization. So if you want to test and take promotional tests, you can try to move up the ladder and rank and get more responsibility, a little more pay. But ultimately, you're always giving back to your community and doing that. And then like a lot of firefighters, because we have those 24 hours off from our shifts, they pick up little maybe side gigs or stuff. So back when I got hired on, I was that electrician. I still am. I've never lost that skill set. So maybe I'd go over to Sergeant Harris's attic and wire up a light in the bathroom over there. Stuff like that I could do on my off days because you have that opportunity. So it's a very rewarding job in a team atmosphere, and I really like that. My job's a little different now. I work 8 to 4, doing a lot of the public outreach and stuff, but most of our 136 members, they work that schedule, 24 hours on, 48 hours off.
Thanks, Zach. So for the students on today and even watching the recording after, what are some ways they can do some career exploration, ride-alongs, information sessions? What are some different things that are available for students to explore your careers in your areas?
The Davenport Police Department, we do have an Explorers program. Unfortunately, it's paused right now, but I'm more than willing to share information with Bettendorf Police Department. They do have an active Explorers program right now. So that's up to, I think, about 22 years old. For high school students, I think you have to be between the ages of 14 through 22 years old. I know Officer Poyer over at Bettendorf Police Department, he has an active Explorers program. Hopefully we'll get ours back going here soon. But I know that they meet once a month. They talk about different topics. They get to practice doing traffic stops. They get to I know in Bettendorf they actually get to do some firearms training. They talk about mental health. They talk about searching buildings, just all the different topics that a police officer would do. So that's a great opportunity for them to be, or for you as high school students to be involved with. Also, once code restrictions lift at Davenport Police Department, you would be able to contact the police department and do a ride along for about 4 hours too.
I'll just piggyback off of what Sergeant Harris was saying. Davenport Fire also has an Explorer program. I'll lead that. We're also on pause right now until the mayor says we're going to open up all the stations and everything. And with that, you can kind of see behind the scenes how things work. We go to every station we have, we do tours. And then we could also help out in providing those ride-alongs also. Typically, Saturday is a very unique morning. We clean all the stations, and then on top of it, all the apparatus. We go through all of our equipment, and then you can kind of go on calls with our members and see what this job is really about. It's very unique that way. So, and then to answer one of the questions I see that's on here, it's what skill sets do you think your job includes? We train a lot. So one thing that's been very unique for me coming in as an electrician first, and then a firefighter, and then now law enforcement, I didn't have any background in those skill sets. I didn't have this knowledge prior. And the best part about these jobs is we get trained. We get trained constantly on how to do things, constantly on how to react. And it's all about the training programs we have in place. I learned a lot at Medic, and we were always using those skills. At the fire department, we're always hands-on. And right now I'm finding out the Davenport Police Department does a fantastic job of training and keeping their members sharp and safe and how to respond to calls. So everything's about training here, and a lot of it is very much hands-on.
Just to jump in after Zach, some of the skills that you're going to need to probably bring with you or develop as you come into any of these three disciplines are what we call soft skills, right? The ability to communicate with somebody, the ability to work with a group, the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, called empathy, right? There's a lot of things that people need to bring, and not everybody has all of those skills. And I think when you do the job and you see how people are able to react to different things, you realize that those are things. Integrity. I mean, think about it. The public trusts everybody on this panel to go into their home, take care of their loved ones, and not steal the watch on the dresser. They just inherently let you go, and they give you the freedom to do what you do because that's who you are and that's the job you have, right? So the trust, you have to, it's earned, it's not given, right? You have to earn it as an individual and as an organization. Those things are huge. And if you need to work on those things or bone up on that kind of stuff, it's a good thing to do. Soft skills are important, especially because it's not simply an office gig where everybody gets along and you go do your thing and you go home and that's it, right? Paramedics can work in the law enforcement world. They can work with the fire department and law enforcement as ERT medics, right? SWAT medics. There are opportunities there. They work in the hospitals. They work in industry. They work on oil rigs. I know like a dude that goes for a month at a time. They helicopter him onto the rig. He works for a month and he comes home for a month. It's just, there are many opportunities that exist with medicine in this emergency medical services world. It's a great stepping stone. Again, it's a path or the preferred path to get to the fire service. It really, really is. And then, like Zach said, a lot of firemen start out, they work on the side, working at an ambulance service or another job that uses their particular skill set. It's a great way to supplement your income. It really, really is. So, and again, Zach was right. A lot of us have done, other things in our world. Medic schedules vary, but again, just like the other two guys on this panel, we're open 24/7. We don't close. So there's got to be folks able to answer the call when it goes out. So you could work a night shift, you could work a day shift, you could work weekends, you could work 24s, you could work 12s. It just depends where you work and what you do. And it's not only in this area, but EMS and fire and law enforcement is the same relatively, right, wherever it is you go. So the general things are the same. So the need is 24/7. So we provide, the EMT class is what, a semester? That's all an EMT class is to get you started. It's 4 weeks. 4 months. Whew. And the paramedic class will run you 9 months after all of that, with a lot more information, a lot more dedication and time spent. So, so for a semester, you can knock out that EMT program and you can have opportunities to apply to the fire service, apply to the law enforcement agencies with a leg up on some folks that wouldn't have that in their background. So.
Thank you. So earlier we touched on what you enjoy most about what you do, but what are some of the flip side of that is what are some of the challenges you face in your career?
I saw that question come through just a little bit, right? Let me read it so I answer it correctly. How do you deal with not being able to save everybody? I think as long as, for me, is I know that we did what we should have done and how we should have done it, right? Sometimes it doesn't go your way. You work to make sure that if it can, it does, but it doesn't always go your way. I think being in it for a long time, you see over and over, that's the way it works, right? It's not that bad things happen to good people. You're there to do the job. You're there to work with the families of those folks that maybe had an unfortunate incident, unfortunate outcome. It is difficult. I mean, one of the things that people now are really, really keen or aware about is mental health for the people that do this job. It's a big, big deal. And to be able to have someone to talk to about, this really kind of bothered me. What I saw, what I heard, the whole thing really bothers me. To have someone to talk to, that is by far the best way to deal with all these things. And I mean, Zach's been in a long time, and Sergeant Harris as well, been in it for a long time and seen a lot and had to do a lot. and you just move forward, right? You understand that you did what you should have done and how you should have done it, and you move forward. That's the easiest way. It's not an easy thing, but that's the best way to explain it. That's how it's done for me. And you need to speak to somebody if you have an issue. That's the way to do it. It's a team game, you guys. We're not out there one. It's a team game, truck game, car game. Everybody's out there together.
So for students that are wanting to apply, how does that process look like? Where do they go? What's that onboarding process? Andrew, do you want to start with that one?
Yes, we are always looking for qualified people to apply for the Davenport Police Department. So it used to be once a year, but now we've been hiring up to 3 times a year. So the city of Davenport, you can look us up on our websites, and to human resources, and you can put your information on there. So when we do have a testing process, they will reach out to you. Also, just keep an eye on our social media, on Facebook, the police department's websites. They always put alerts out when we have hiring. So the first thing is for you to be 21, to just like Fiire. To make sure that you have your 1 year of active duty military or 2 years of college. And then the first process is to take a physical fitness test, which is a 1.5 mile run, 1 minute push-up test, and 1 minute sit-up test. So if you pass that, and it depends on your age and your gender about how many push-ups and sit-ups you have to do. If you pass that, then you have to take police officer selection test, the post test. It's a written test. It's prepared for someone that has a 12th grade education. So you don't need to have specifically a law enforcement background. We just want to make sure that you can read and write, do basic addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. There's some pre-tests for you to take and to prepare yourself for that test. Once you pass that, then you go into the background phase where your packet will be assigned to a detective or a police officer. It's very extensive. The packet's probably about 30 pages where you'll be listing all your addresses, every job that you've had. We'll be looking at your transcripts from your high school or colleges, your military paperwork right there. We'll be calling your references, possibly going to your neighborhoods to just knock on doors to make sure that you'd be a good applicant for us. We also do a polygraph test, lie detector test. Integrity is the backbone of law enforcement. So no one in this police department is perfect or has not made a mistake, but we need to be honest about those mistakes and learn from those mistakes. If you pass that, then you would go into an interview with our chiefs and our captains, our administrative officers, and then you're put on a civil service list. And if there's any openings in the year, they'll bring you back for another year or another interview, and then you would be hired. So once you get hired, you go to the Law Enforcement Academy. That's about 4 months in Johnston, Iowa, which is by Des Moines. It's Monday through Friday. You're getting paid the whole time. You take a city car up there. Once you complete the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy, you come back and you go through 4 months of field training officer program. And then you're finally out on your own. So it takes about 9 months from there. So it is a long process. That's probably one of the most difficult parts about the process is that it takes patience and it takes a long time. And family and friends are always asking, well, why haven't you been hired yet? And things like that. It's just, one, you have to get through all those stages, and 2, there has to be a spot open for you.
Thank you. Zach?
All right. So to piggyback off of Sergeant Harris's comments, we also have a civil service list that we get hired off of. So we're just wrapping up our listing right now. Once that gets done here in the next few weeks, we can hire off that list, and that list is retained for 2 years or till it's exhausted, and we go to hire again. So for our process, you got to be 21 years old, be an EMT basic, live in Davenport. We have a written test and a physical test. So a written test is much like Sergeant Harris was talking about. It seemed like it was very much like a high school exam for some reading comprehension, some answering questions, things of that nature. And after your written test, then you go on to what's called CPAT. CPAT is the Candidate Physical Ability Test. It's 8 different stations of a physical assessment. You have 10 minutes and 20 seconds to complete the course. All kinds of different things, from walking on a stair mill with a weighted vest, hose drag. They have a dummy pull. You have a maze to go through, sledgehammer hits, all kinds of different stuff that if you have, our job's very physical. We carry a lot of equipment. By the time you put all your gear on, an air pack, and grab a tool, you're looking at an additional 50 to 60 pounds that you're working with in a dangerous environment. Recently we had a rescue up on Locust Street from high schoolers that were trapped in a house. And while the fire department's arriving on scene, law enforcement showed up. They didn't have all the gear we have, but what they did was they worked with a contractor, put a ladder up. They rescued these high schoolers from a house they were trapped in. So right in that case, the police officers got to live their, dreams of being firefighters for a day. They didn't have all of our gear and equipment, but it was fantastic. And that goes back to that team sport. So again, after you pass the written, you pass our physical, we do a very thorough background check. I was just part of it now that I'm duly sworn. All the applicants, we split up that number. We look through everything. We're looking at your social media. We're looking at references you have, employers you have. And one of the things we're looking at too is your education. Have you gotten in trouble? What have things been like for you? Because we want the best people out there to represent our department. We're not looking for people that are just looking for a job, that want to do something for a while. We're looking for someone that wants to serve their community for an entire career. So we really dive into that, get into their backgrounds. We talk about a lot of things. So keeping that record clean and then being willing to be trained and educated throughout your career. It does not stop once you get hired on. The training is consistent, whether it's hands-on or annual medical tests or whatever the case might be. We're constantly getting trained on new skill sets, new ways of doing things, all types of computery stuff that I'm not too smooth with. But it's very rewarding after you go through that process. And getting on the fire department, it's just fantastic. We see it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of involvement, but it takes a lot of work. And if you're willing to get after it and try to get on that list, and then you're willing to be patient to get that phone call, it can be a big game changer for you.
Zach, Jamie?
Right. So if you listen closely to what Sergeant Harris and Zach said, 21 is the magic age for both of those organizations, right? They have to be 21 to be hired. In EMS, to run as a medic or an EMT, that is not the case, at least not everywhere. You have to be 18 years old to hop in class. And when you're done, to take the test. And then if you're 18 years old, 19 years old, you are, and as long as you have a certification in the state that you want to work in, you can be hired either by a public entity or a private entity, right? A public or private ambulance service that does either transfer work or 911 work. So it's a great place to get your feet wet, to get in the system, to be able to work in that environment, work with the fire department hand in hand, work with the police department hand in hand on a regular basis. So when you go and that's really what I want to do, you're ready, you understand it, you work toward getting that credential, you work toward getting that information on your resume that says, look, I prepared, I'm ready, this is what I want to do. So it's a really nice thing. EMS is the gateway to moving forward. We have many people that stay in EMS their entire career. I did. It's just kind of how it worked out for me. And now I work at the college and run a program, and it's a pretty good deal as far as that goes. So we understand what it takes to be where you want to be, right? Either in the fire service, law enforcement, or in the EMS. And we'll be happy to do what we can to help you get there. But it is a process, like both of these gentlemen have said. It's not an easy thing. But if you're dedicated and that's what you want to do, there certainly are pathways to get where you want to go. Absolutely.
Jamie, I have a question. What do you recommend students take any types of certain classes? This could be for all of you. I know you all talked about some classes you took in college, but what are some classes they could take in high school that might give them an edge? And what would be your best piece of advice for any students who want to go into this field?
I was actually going to mention this. Thanks for bringing it up, Carrie. When I go to high schools or whatever, I tell kids, look, I think it was touched on today already. Please, please, please keep your driving record clean. Good grief, please, right? Don't take yourself out of the running for a job because when I was in high school, well, I like to go fast. Regularly, don't do that, right? Be smart about the choices that they make. Keep your record clean. If it's between you and somebody else for that position and your record is meh and theirs is clean, you're not going to win, right? So smart decisions are important early. I hate to put that on high school kids, but they're smart. They can handle it. They need to make good decisions early, right? And keep their record clean because people are going to look at their record. Everyone background checks everybody. The organizations do, the certification bodies do, the states do. Everybody looks at everybody 3 or 4 times actually. So it's important to keep your nose clean, your record clean. I think high school kids have to take a communications class or a speech class, interpersonal communications. They have to have that to come to me. To be better prepared for me, I would love them to have an anatomy and physiology course. It just makes it so much easier. Whether you go to EMT or move on to paramedic, understanding how it works is really, really important. You know, that's the big one for me. Pharmacology class, computer classes, these kids are all computer wizards. Most of them, that's because that's the world they grew up in. That's what they do every day. They're really good at them. But those are the things that are important to me. A psychology class, why people do what they do and how they act, why they act how they act, what the choices they make. That's important as well for me. So that's kind of my 2 cents on preparatory work. But keep that record clean, man. Keep it clean, please, especially your driving record. You don't realize how much that affects what you do moving forward. It's a big, big deal.
Zach, do you have anything to say on this topic?
Not really. Ours are pretty, you don't have to have that formal education coming in. So it's kind of figuring out what you want to do. There's that downtime where you can, explore your options, take some classes. It's only going to benefit yourself in the long run. Once you're hired on with the city of Davenport, they do a lot of tuition reimbursement. So if you get hired on and there's something you want to look into even down the road, there's opportunities to do that and you can take some classes for free. So I lucked out a little bit. I got my associates way early on, right out of high school back in '94. So I got my associate's degree and then I went with those different paths. But then now when I started testing to be an officer, to be a lieutenant, I went back to school, went online and I received my bachelor's degree in fire administration, of which the city of Davenport paid for 100%. And it was something that it's benefited me to advance up the ladder. And it's also helped out with pay. There's an incentive with that education. So not necessarily do you have to have something, but what you're constantly trying to do when you're applying for these jobs is making yourself look attractive. And with degrees, with unique skill sets, with different backgrounds, it's always going to benefit. There was a mentality in the fire service early on. They like construction workers, which that worked out for me. You know what a building looks like due to schematics and things like that. We didn't have an electrician. So then when it came to fire investigations, I would constantly put my letter into the fire marshal talking about how I'd like to be part of the team, how I could assist with that type of background. And I've been doing that since 2012. So there's all kinds of different things to do. We've got a guy right now that's got a really fantastic mechanical background with automobiles. And he's on our fire cause team now when it comes to like vehicle fires. Could this really happen this way? So there's a broad search there, but I would always continue to consider just getting some education down, taking some classes. There's other programs out there. I think Kirkwood provides a fire science associate's degree. And we see more and more people that are applying that have degrees like that or some education. And it makes them look maybe a little different than just working any career. Military is always like Sergeant Harris was talking about. There's a preference with that. There's points you get on your application and testing process. So that's another avenue to consider. These jobs are kind of like that with our structures and how we're set up. So.
Officer Harris, do you have any thoughts about this?
Yes. Yeah, just to reach out to the high schoolers. And I actually get asked to go speak to one of the high schools every year because I made a comment, if I had to do it over again, I would have paid more attention in Spanish class. I had that attitude in high school that I would never use Spanish. And I just went through the motions just to get it done so I wouldn't have to take it up at UNI. But when my first law enforcement job was in Denison, Iowa, we were over 50% Hispanic there, Hispanic citizens. So I use that almost every day, but obviously I didn't know it as well as I should have. So I strongly encourage that will help you separate you from the rest of the candidates. If you could speak a second language, especially here in Davenport, Spanish would be the most prevalent secondary language that we would use as a police officer. Also, like sign language too. That's a huge skill set that would help. There has been times that we've had citizens that signed and we had to struggle to find ways to communicate, because just like Jame and Soliz, we can't do our job without communicating. And so that's huge. Also volunteering. That's one of the questions that I'm giving you guys. One of the questions for the law enforcement for the Davenport Police Department, they will specifically ask, what volunteering have you done in the past 5 years? So take those opportunities, whatever. If you like to work with kids, become a big brother or big sister. If you like to, it doesn't matter. We just need to have a candidate that has a history of serving the community in whatever you feel comfortable with. And as Soliz is talking about, education. I'm the same boat as Soliz. I'm currently enrolled at St. Ambrose to get my master's degree in organizational leadership. That's going to help me out hopefully in the future here at the police department. If it doesn't, it's going to open doors up for me when I'm done being a police officer. Education is that one thing that no one can ever take away from you. It's so important. And when we're lucky here at Davenport that they do help us get our education, help fund it, not as much as I'd like to, but maybe just St. Ambrose is just really expensive. But they also give bonuses. I think for the city of Davenport is, if you have your associate's degree, it's $1,200. If your bachelor's degree, it's $1,400. Your master's $1,600, and your doctorate $2,000. So the city does put a lot of value on education.
Great, thank you so much. Well,
if I could just real quick,
ahead,
Kelsey, if I could just talk, Sergeant Harris brought up the volunteer aspect. I know that there are many people in many different schools across our region that are probably gonna view this at least at one point, right? There are in your communities, right? There are fire departments and ambulance services that aren't necessarily career departments. They're not paid. It's not a job necessarily, but just like anybody else that needs people to work at their agency, these folks need people to volunteer at their agencies. Whether it's a volunteer fireman, a volunteer EMT, those options exist. You take the same EMT class, you take a firefighter 1 class, you take a firefighter 2 class, and you can volunteer and do this work and see if it's really what I want to do, and if it's your passion, you want to do it. All that experience makes you look a little more attractive on your resume when you apply to do that for your career. So that's a win for both sides, right? Both sides, for both the student and it's a win for the agencies who really need good volunteers. They really do, especially now. Everybody's on the scramble mode for volunteers to keep their doors open. So it's an idea and an opportunity for you to serve your community, which really is important. It looks really good on a resume.
Thanks for adding that, Jamie. Well, I think we've covered all the questions that the students have had and that we have for you. Thank you so much for joining us, Andrew, Zach, and Jamie. I know you are all very busy and we very much appreciate your time that you shared with us this morning. So thank you so much for joining us for this session.
Thanks, Kelsey and Erica. Appreciate you guys.